A judge of election is basically responsible for overseeing the election process. So we make sure that the rules and the laws and the regulations of voting are followed. And the goal is to make sure that every eligible voter has the right to exercise their vote.
The judge of elections oversees all of the operations on election day of fair and legal voting, responsible for coordinating staff, often coordinating with the location, and picking up and returning materials from the county courthouse and media.
It's an elected position, and we do get a small stipend for serving. If you're interested in becoming a judge, you have to let your party head know and tell them that you're interested in being on the ballot. You have to get signatures from people in your community to have your name put on the ballot, and then you just need to run and hope people vote for it.
Technically, you're nonpartisan on the day from beginning to end, and it's a nonpartisan role, but because of the way Pennsylvania law works, the parties coordinate the elections for the position. And there's a bit of a partisan, who ends up, it's kind of a check and balance of Republican versus Democrat, of, the majority inspector and the judge tend to reflect the majority registration in a precinct, and the minority inspector and clerk tend to reflect the minority registration, so Republican versus Democrat. Technically, anyone of any registration could be elected to any role.
Well, I probably have been a judge for 5 years or so. I was a committee person before that, but Delaware County holds classes, and you go there. And then I learned, obviously, from the judge whose place I took over. It's really a training period. I mean, you have to learn how to put these machines up, and that's one of the things we do every morning at 6 o'clock so that people can vote at 7.
I had a kind of a learning by example as a machine inspector. I was signed in, appointed by the court for a machine inspector vacancy when the former judge was getting ready to retire. And we discussed it, and I was going to be on the ballot the next time the judgeship came up. And she walked me through how she did things. And then once I was elected, I continued to attend the free trainings in media. It's really kind of an involved training, and it's a good idea to go each time. And in fact, you're really required if you're on the election board. Many people do not, but sometimes something changes or their guidance changes for a practical reason, and it's always a good idea to check in there.
This is just one of the pieces of paperwork that has to do with voting, where if people need assistance, we document, we have them sign and document it. We have certain people assigned to help them in the voting booth. In a lot of cases, people will come in and they'll say they're inactive and they need to sign a form that says this affirmation of elector, so we had to have somebody sign that for us. And it just, those kind of things go on all day. And a lot of times I do have to call media if I can't find them at all and there's nothing, to figure out if they're in the wrong place, if they should vote for the provisional ballot, if they're not registered. So those types of things go on throughout the whole process.
The worst thing that can happen is the machine stop working. Because if the machines don't work, we really can't vote. We can't take the votes by hand. So that can really back things up, and we have to have a technician come out, and those individuals who are in line, hopefully they'll be able to wait. But that is the absolute worst thing that can happen.
One of the things we do when any voter comes in that can't reach, and we have a lot of that because we have a lot of people on walkers and in wheelchairs, is that we'll adjust the machine for them, put it lower, raise it. We can't raise it up because it usually fits most people, but if they can't reach it, we'll lower the machine so that they can vote.
All the votes get counted. It's electronically done, so when the polls close tonight, we will go through the procedure that we need to close each machine, and each machine will count the votes. And then we tally everything up, and we, have to write everything down. So it's still kind of an archaic way of doing it, but there's a machine, computer voting system, and then we as people check that system and make sure that everything gets counted. So it's like a double check, and we write all the votes down and tally everything up manually, and then we give those votes to the county and media.
This is big even for a midterm, just having that many people. We've had people out the door most of the morning. Sometimes we would be here and we'd have an hour, we'd have 2 people come in. We have not even had a chance for most people to have coffee. So it's been crazy.
I think there have been a lot of people energized from both sides of the spectrum. And I'm always happy to just see turnout and engagement, because I think it's pathetic that our turnout is often under, when the real decisions are being made, which is at the primary, that's when, in many cases, especially local offices that aren't that sexy, but they make a difference to your daily life significantly more than what's going on the national stage. People just don't show up, and today it's raining and it's not a presidential year. We have unusual turnout, and I think that's why it is. I think people are really engaged.
I think we're at a tipping point right now. People are fired up on one side or the other, and to them it's an issue of way of life, rights, and some people like what's happening and they're trying to protect that, and other people think we're going in the wrong direction and they want to change.
It's important, especially for women during this time, to get their voices heard, and I want to make sure that it's a tradition that I get to share this time with my baby daughter Julia, so that she knows that it's important to vote, and I'll take her every time, so that when she grows up coming to the polls, and then when she turns 18, she'll realize how important it is to vote for herself.
I think young people typically in the past have not thought that it's going to really affect them that much. It's a privilege to not have an election affect you, and we're seeing now that the decisions that politicians are making are affecting each and every one of us. As a woman, I've definitely seen the impact that laws and legislators have had on my life, so I think it's really important to get out there and make sure your voice is heard, and I don't think that you can complain on social media or say your opinions if you're not going to go out there and do something to change the environment that you're living in.
Very few people have ever been in here and been mad about anything. We really bend over backwards to try to help everybody. I think we have a good rapport with our voters. A lot of them we know. Everybody who's sitting here lives in this area. One of us knows somebody that comes in here in most cases.
I was involved in the 2008 election with Obama as a poll watcher, and I never had a problem personally voting at this particular location. Everything always went smoothly. But when I went to the other polls and I was watching, there were many instances in which people could have been turned away if someone hadn't been there to give them the knowledge that they needed, or to stand up for them and make sure that they were either looked up on books or whatever technicality that they were having, that it was worked out. And so I saw, being the judge of election, when the opportunity came, wow, this is a really important position, because you're standing in a place where you can really be the decision maker of whether someone can exercise their vote. I have to have the proper knowledge and the proper resources available and know how to use them to make sure that when someone comes into the polls and they have a question, that question is answered. So that's why I wanted to be a judge, and I think that's one of the really important things that a judge does. As a matter of fact, it's the most important thing.